All right, we're back for the latest edition of MM+M's Agency 100 video series. I'm Jameson Fleming, MM+M's editor-in-chief, and we are here today with CultHealth CEO Jeff Rothstein and CCO David Stemler. We're going to talk about the latest in the AOR model and how AI is disrupting that. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, excited to have this chat. So let's just start off and let's chat about just the overall state of the AOR and agency model right now.
Sure, I can jump in. Well, I have a short resume, so I've really had two jobs prior to this one currently. First was at an independent agency. The second was at a holding company, and that's really the classic way that you sort of define what makes up an AOR. Your independents are scrappy, nimble, startup-like in so many ways, but they lack the reach and the tentacles to have those expansive capabilities to tap into at a moment's notice. Holding companies have those capabilities, right? They're these big global organizations, but with that and the separate siloed P&Ls comes a lot of bureaucracy and red tape that can be cumbersome to work around. CultHealth, what's interesting there is our parent company is a technology company and a global talent company. And so we can tap into those resources without necessarily the red tape. I like to think of it as all the capabilities of a holding company without the holding company.
Yeah, so I would love to know more about your model specifically. So, I mean, when you say tap into those resources, I mean, how easy of a call, is that just an email or a call to the right person and suddenly that relationship is there? So walk me through, if a client needs those services, how do you make that happen for them quickly?
Well, so that's a great question because, look, I'm one of the founders of CultHealth, and as we got to a certain scale and started looking at what's our next move, how do we scale and how do we partner, merge with another organization, what would be the right fit for us? Indegene itself was really fascinating and offered this kind of continuum of capability and a real eagerness to integrate us into what they're doing. And we were very eager to integrate all of their capabilities into what we're doing. And so right now, we can effectively work across any of the offerings. Right now, I sit in a group in a leadership group with all of the capability leads. We're just one team right now. So it's been a really exciting and very different experience from anything that I've seen and what I imagined for ourselves.
Yeah, and when you talk to your clients, I mean, how quickly have they, adopted this idea of, oh, hey, we can get more out of CultHealth? How quickly have they kind of, recognized this is a new model that they're working with and embraced it?
So the client's response has been fantastic because it's really expanded what we can do on the digital and data side, and that's really the future. And it was one of the most important things for us as an agency was to be among the most elite and best capabilities in terms of offering those types of capabilities. And so now, not just being able to have the great strength of creative capability that David and his team are producing and the strategic work and medical work that's coming from the agency, but now to tie it all together with data, omni-channel delivery. The clients are looking at us as a much more complete offering and one that we've brought a level of sophistication to our communications that was really hard to imagine as an independent.
Yeah, and as a CCO, I mean, often I hear within the holding companies, things can be very siloed, and sometimes tapping into those other resources can take some time and not be that easy. So in this organization, how has it made your life easier as CCO?
Well, it's a great question. I think at the end of the day, the clients are looking for that end-to-end solution, right? They want fewer points of friction, but they don't want the silos. They want that connected team as their thought partner, as their content creator. And in this model, it makes my job easier. I don't necessarily have to do as much selling because I can walk in as part of a team that is, true, on the ground, up and running. People I know in and out, I know well from across the world that I walk work with on a day-to-day basis, and I can tap into skill sets that are not my own and don't have to fake it. They know data better than I ever will. That's a good thing, and that informs our creative.
Sure. And so when you think about where everything is going, there's the elephant in the room that's going to disrupt everything, and that's AI. And so as you think about how AI is playing into what you do in your business, what are some of the shifts that you're undergoing to meet the future of that technology?
So this is obviously a huge question. We could spend the next several days talking about
sure,
this.
Of course.
I guess this becomes, I think, one of the biggest ways that we're differentiating what we're doing. And it's kind of unexpected because I think a lot of agencies are looking at how do we use AI maybe in two key ways, right? It's on the generative creative side. So how are we enhancing our creative? How are we working faster? How are we helping to bring ideas to life a little bit differently and faster and collaborate with AI? And then you also look at it within the processes. How do we facilitate the operation with this? We're doing all of that, but now we're doing something very different. And I think you have to look at the agency biz over the last decade or so to understand this. And I'll put it in a little historical context here, is that there's a period where companies like our parent company, Indegene, started pitching a lot of the clients to say, you can decouple your production from your creative resources and save a lot of money. So by having workforces in India, as one example, that's where our company is based, doing all of the digital production, instead of having the AOR do that, they could save a lot of money. And so ultimately the clients bought into that, and it's worked out pretty well. I think the agencies, we tried to hang on to that for a bit, but it's a little bit harder to make the argument for that. But now what we're looking at is there a dividing line between concept and content? Can you actually decouple the content side from the concept side, and in doing so, make your agency a stronger and more potent force, and also expand your content capability and drive costs down? And where AI is having a big impact on the conceptual side, it's having a real dramatic impact on the content side. So we're able to produce much more content faster and at less cost, and with great, phenomenal impact. And so AI is having such a huge impact on that, and allowing the agency to really focus on the thing that I think agencies are really good at, which is coming at these unique creative sparks, these ideas that resonate with human beings in a very emotional way. That AI, will it get there? I mean, it's hard to bet against AI in the long run, but I haven't really seen it start to do that just yet.
Yeah, no, that's really fascinating, because I think over the last 5 to 7 years in this industry, we've seen a lot of investment from ad agencies in their own production houses, in the holding companies buying production houses. And it sounds like almost you're sort of skipping that step and getting to what everybody else has through AI and through some smart internal strategy and how you're setting up your agency.
Well, it's a little bit of both, because Indegene was at the forefront of that production side. So we have a pretty large global business now with some 5,000, 5,500 or so people globally who are executing on the production side of that. So we're able to integrate that into our offering as well pretty seamlessly. But AI is starting to change the nature of that production business. And I think what we're also doing, because it's one company, and while sure a lot of the agency holding companies have been doing that, they've been investing in production. We are now, again, it really can't overstate this enough. We're one operation, so the content group and the AOR group is now organized to report into me, and all of the creative for that is reporting into David. So we have common leadership to make sure that there's consistency and quality at every step of the operation, while we're able to deliver the scale and really focus the AOR teams on this big concept ideas.
Sure. And David, I mean, Jeff covered a lot of ground here on AI, but is there any other facets of the AI revolution that you want to chime in on?
In this model, Jeff might be the only CEO you're going to hear of who is actively trying to move business away from the AOR. Because let's not force those great ideators to spend the bulk of their time resizing 1,000 banner ads. Let's move that work to where it is more effective and efficient, using tools like AI to accelerate and expedite the development of that content. And let's let the AORs do what they are good at. Let's let them do what they were hired for. That's the bigger strategic thinking. That's the higher conceptual creative output. And anything after the origination stage that is more evolutionary or derivative in nature, let's move that over to our content team. It's more economical for our clients, but it's more motivating for our team. They get up in the morning chasing that next big idea. Let's give them more of that. And that's a good thing at the end of the day for the creative department.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're putting a lot of thought into meeting the industry where you think it's going. So let's talk a little bit more about where healthcare and healthcare marketing is going over the next year or so that you feel like you're preparing yourself for.
Well, I actually think you have to measure it in terms of months. The amount of change that we are seeing from AI is really happening week over week. And it's no longer really a game of, let's say, 5-year forecasts. We really have to be scenario planning in real time. And as an agency, we have to be flexible. We have to be ready to adapt at a moment's notice and ensure that we are positioned to seize on that next inflection point, that next pivot in the market. And that's exactly why that sort of marriage of cult and Indogene, we think, is so well suited for this ongoing revolution.
I want to pivot a little bit because I do want to talk a little bit about kind of your brand ethos as an agency. And as you read in the Agency 100 profile we did on Cult Health, one of the fascinating things we had in there was this embrace of we want to create cult followings for our clients. And that's as someone who geeks out on agency kind of branding and how they present themselves, I think that's a really effective one because it's ultimately what every brand wants. And so from a creative culture standpoint, how have you been able to build a creative culture that really supports this idea that everybody here is focused on creating this cult following for our clients?
Go for it, David.
Yeah, it's an exciting brief to get as a creative. We work in healthcare. We're exclusively focused on health, and we ask ourselves the question: why is it that healthcare brands that are so important, in fact, the most important in our lives, they extend and improve our lives very meaningfully? Why do they lack those cult followings that we see among sneakers and cell phone brands? And how can we try to produce that? How can we right that wrong and engender those followings for those deserving healthcare brands? That's a great reason to get up in the morning as a creative. That's a really good brief. So yes, it's our North Star as an agency. It's certainly what we are proud of in terms of the work that we've done, from our big national TV spots all the way down to a detail aid that is very memorable, repeatable, shareable in an HCP's office. But it's also motivational for our team. Like I said, it's a great reason to get up in the morning.
Thank you to David Stemler and Jeff Rothstein, the CCO and CEO of Cult Health, for joining us on the latest edition of MM+M's Agency 100 series. Hope to see you next time.
Thank you so much.